So here we are, my dear ones, on this great good Sunday, moving deeper into this beautiful summer of ours, knowing all is well. And that's what we're here to know, all is well. And as we know that, we're looking at this thing called tough times. But I'm not quite sure what tough times are anymore, because I don't see tough times as something just out there that happens once in a while upon us or so on. I just think that toughness and roughness is part of life and living, and sometimes it's our experience. It comes and it goes. All of these experiences come and go. Things of any nature come and go, like it or not. That's the way it is. That's how life works. Things come and go. Persons, places, things come and go. Because persons, places, and things are not the essential truth of us. That's something to ponder, but that's a talk in its own right. But rough times, tough times. I love the story of the young man who was full of curiosity in life and living, and one day he found himself part of a group that was touring a great furniture store that produced beautiful furniture. And they also visited the manufacturing plant and the wood mill, all in the same campus, and looked at everything from beginning to end. So when they got to the wood mill, the young man was the most curious of all, because he saw one craftsman and all he was doing was just making two piles of wood. One pile had in front of it "good" written on a card, the other one had in front of it "discard" written on a card. And of course the discard pile was huge compared to the good pile that was very little. And he said to the craftsman, he said, "I'm curious," he said, with regard to these two piles of wood. He said, "Me looking at them, I can't see any difference between the two." And the craftsman responded, he said, "Yes, I can see that. But to the practice and to the skilled eye, there is a difference." He said, "The wood in the small pile," he said, "has a very fine grain, and they will make beautiful pieces of furniture. The wood in the large pile have very coarse grain, and they will be lumber. They'll be used as lumber." And that's how we're defining them here. That's why we have to separate them and sort them out. And the young man said, "Oh, okay." He said, "But how is it that some, trees are coarse and some trees are fine wooded and so on?" He said, "The fine wooded trees," he said, "those are the trees," he said, "that grow up the mountain, and they are open to all the elements of the weather. They have to endure from the time that they are saplings. They have to endure all the heavy storms, all the rain, all the wind, all the excessive heat, and so on. And it makes them strong, and it makes them tough. And because of that, they're condensed into this refinement of fine-grained wood." He said, "The coarse wood," he said, those are the trees that grow in the valleys where they're very sheltered from all the storms and the hail and the rain and the heat and so on. And because they don't have to struggle, they don't have to fight for themselves, their wood is very, very coarse. And of course, you get it instantly what the analogy is with the way we live our lives and the two types of wood and whether we can consider ourselves refined wood or coarse wood, depending upon how we have been raised and so on. Because some of us who have had overprotective parents or overprotective circumstances and situations are not as resilient as others who haven't had that and who have had to be in their own corner and stand in their own space and be present to their own needs and so on and fight for what they needed in order to grow up like those saplings did up on the mountains. And so what we didn't get when we were little, we have to then get when we become grown up in order to strengthen ourselves and find that sovereignty within ourselves and be able to be in our own space and withstand all the weathering that takes place. And you and I, let me tell you, we're weathered. We are weathered, and sometimes the weather is not always clement. But if we know that within us there's a sap There's a power, there's a presence, there's an essence that is greater than we are, and we can rely upon that and draw from that to keep us standing tall regardless of the weather. Then we're just doing what we're here to do, to flourish and to thrive and to become the greatness that we can become. So it is indeed true, the old adage that, rough weather makes strong trees. And coupled with that, we could say, well, without friction, there is no heat. And I can remember Napoleon Hill saying way back when, he said, within every obstacle, within every, adverse situation, there is a greater benefit. The seeds of a greater benefit are there to be gleaned. And that's where we need to be when the times get rough and get tough and get hard, and know that we are not those circumstances, and those circumstances do not have to affect us adversely, because by now, as the teaching goes, it's all about attitude, it's all about mental atmosphere, emotional atmosphere, mental and emotional attitude. It's never about what is happening in our lives. It's not about the facts, it's about how we respond to those facts, as to whether we will come through them the better for it or not. It's how we respond. The teaching reminds us of the great scriptures that say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Often you ponder that and you think, well, what in heaven's name does that all mean anyway? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And metaphysically speaking, we could say that in the beginning, pure, unconditioned awareness, then pure, unconditioned awareness imagined itself to be something, and what it imagined itself to be, it became. Or in the beginning, pure consciousness. Then entering into pure consciousness came an idea, and pure consciousness molded itself around that idea, and that idea came into being. Or in my own life, I could say, in the beginning, at 4 years of age, Moira had an idea that Moira would become a nun. Moira thought into that idea, felt into that idea, and over time, Moira became a nun. That's the process of creation. That's how creation happens. Now, as God creates, so too do you, so too do I, as an individualized aspect of God consciousness. Now, here's the thing. I know we talk about his mind, her mind, their minds, crazy minds, off-centered minds, and so on and so forth. And it's all a nonsense, because there's only the one mind. There's only one consciousness. There's only one awareness. Only one. And that mind is the only mind that's ever used. But I'm asking us to take a step further now in our understanding of this teaching today. Instead of thinking of, I'm in the mind of God and the mind of God is in me, and now I'm thinking into the mind of God, I'm asking us to think this way. Since there is only one mind, one consciousness, one life, the one mind, the one consciousness, the one life, the one power, and the one presence is all that thinks through me, is all that feels through me, is all that lives through me. Now that's an empowering concept to entertain. There's only that one mind, one life, one power, one presence, and it is what thinks through me, feels through me, and lives through me. That's all that's going on. If I could embrace that and get my mind around that, see, I used my mind, get my mind around that, or get mind around that, become identified with that, recognize that, then there is no good thing that I cannot express or cannot manifest or cannot experience. Because if I am one with, if I contemplate it, if I think into that idea, if I feel into that idea, I will become that idea. Just as Moira, as a 4-year-old, had the idea, thought into it, felt into it, and became what was thought into and felt into. If I can get the idea deep within myself, the concept deep within myself, there's only the one mind, the one consciousness, the one awareness, and it uses me. It uses me. It uses me to express itself however it chooses to express itself. I am simply a vessel. I am simply a container. I am simply the porthole through which this one power, one presence, one mind, one life expresses itself. So it's doing the thinking through me, doing the feeling through me, doing the being in me and through me and as me. If I could meditate on that, contemplate on that, guess what? I would never again be thinking any small, puny, whiny, gossipy thought. I would never entertain any negative feeling. I would never be in any negative situation ever again, because I'm one with the understanding that it is the greatness within me that's thinking, it's the greatness within me that's feeling, it's the greatness within me that's living through me. So there would be no space, no place for any of the minutiae of all of the stuff that the egoic tendencies in us get us into night, noon, and morning, and even in our dreams. All of the nonsense about ourselves, all of the nonsense about each other, all of the nonsense about life and living. I would simply be getting out of the way and allowing the one mind to think through me, feel through me, and live through me. And that would be a high state of living, I can assure you. And the only reason why we're in any sense of trouble, trial, tribulation, ailment, is because we forget this. We forget who we are, what we are, and whose we are, and we don't remember how life is and what's really going on. So if I could get the great concept that mind uses me for its own expression, life uses me for its own expression, good uses me for its own expression, and that's the only reason why I am. I have no other purpose for being except to be the outlet to the inlet of all of that greatness. If I could just get that a little bit every day and improve upon the little bit every day, a day would come when I, bit by bit, drop by drop, step by step, would get to the whole awareness of that. And I too, like the master teacher Jesus, would become consciously Christed. We are all Christed individuals. Not all of us are consciously Christed. To be consciously Christed is to be totally aware and awake and what many call enlightened. And that's where we all are in our sojourn here. In that journey back onto our original state of being, the state of Christed conscious awareness, or the Buddha mind, or whatever you want to call that wholeness, that completeness, and that fullness. And it's given to you, and it's given to me to be in that state. Absolutely. All of us in this room, regardless of what's going on in our lives, how debauched they have been right up until now, how awful and terrible and debilitating and so on and so forth, they have been right until this moment. That can all stop and cease and desist in an instant. If I could just get my mind around the understanding that in the beginning, pure, undiluted, unconditioned awareness, then that pure awareness had an idea about itself and became the idea it had about itself. We condition ourselves through the thoughts that we think. We condition ourselves through the feelings that we feel. Our the point of mental attention is our balance of power. The point of our mental attention is our balance of power. And you and I have this great thing going for us, and we're mostly unconscious of it and ignore it and do not embrace it and use it to get us through these rough times, these hard patches, these uncertain conditions, these ailments. No, we get bogged down in the condition and we forget the unconditioned aspect of our beings and don't call upon it to move us through the condition into a greater state of being. You shall decree a thing and it shall come to pass, say the great scriptures. You shall decree a thing. That means as I think it, as I feel it, as I know it, so it is. As I think it, as I feel it, as I know it, so it is. Say it with me. As I think it, as I feel it, as I know it, so it is. Now that's the truth. And you can see that when you look back over your life. The ideas that you have entertained, that you thought into and felt into, how they came to be. How they showed up in your life as an experience. Of course they did. They have to, because that's the law of mind in action. There's an absolute, pristine law of being that never changes. And it is that law that says, as you see it, as you perceive it, as you think it, as you feel it, as you know it, so it is. It will come to pass. I love that other scripture quote too that reminds us that the word I sent forth out of my mouth, it goes forth to accomplish that whereunto I send it, to achieve that which I desire. It does not return to me empty or void. Love that, always have. From Isaiah 55, verse 11, chapter 55, verse 11. I remember that because it means an awful lot to me. I got that. I got that when I eventually got that, having read it so many different times. My word doesn't return to me void, but it accomplishes that which unto I send it, and it fulfills the promise of the desire that I had when I established that thing that I desired in its incipiency. In the beginning, I had an idea. I thought into the idea. I felt into the idea. And in time, I became that idea. I know that. I look over my life and I say, oh my gosh, it's so clear in so many incidences how what I thought did come upon me, as with Job. What I felt, what I thought came upon me. So this week, all of us are challenged to be careful about what we're thinking into that unconditioned state, what we're feeling into that unconditioned state, because we are making a condition out of that unconditioned substance, that divine substance, that creative goop that we're all thinking into, that produces experiences in our lives. And we can use that law for good in the universe greater than we are, and we can benefit and prosper as a result. Simply identifying with, recognizing and knowing that as I think it, feel it, and live it, so it is all I ever need to know, ever. I don't need to know another thing in order to prosper, to flourish, and to thrive. I don't need to know anything else. But I have to get it, not just as a mental concept. I have to get it as a deep feeling in my very marrow of my bones. I have to really know it and feel it, that nothing else is going to detract me from understanding and realizing that. But none of that's going to happen without this thing called faith, faith, faith. It's all based on faith, what I'm going to believe in. See, because in this awareness, I have to believe in things unseen. Remember, everything that is in creation came out of what was once unseen. Everything I see was once unseen. It was an idea somewhere. And then it came into being. So my faith is based on what is unseen. My faith is based on what I have no evidence in the material world to back up, none whatsoever. In fact, I have to keep believing when all the evidence points to the very opposite of what I'm believing and knowing and feeling. That's what I have to do. It's what I'm called to do. And as Holmes says, your faith must be so strong, so powerful, that to conceive anything other than the idea you wish to bring into manifestation would be unthinkable and impossible. So once you set your mind on what it is you wish to realize, nothing must get in the way of you taking your mind away from your commitment to thinking that, feeling that, and being as though that were already in place. I've got to appropriate that sense of well-being around it. The well-being I would feel if I had manifested that. I have to appropriate that ASAP. It's very simple. The law of manifestation. Number one, I conceive it. Number two, I become what I conceive. And so it is. And the way I become it is to think it and feel it and back it up in what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And keep telling myself the truth about the thing that I desire. My good is there for me, as Emma Curtis Hopkins says, and I am supposed to have it. My good is there for me, and I'm supposed to have it. There's nothing in the way of it except myself. And my way of thinking, and my way of feeling, and the choices I make. Remember, mind is the key to every good thing or not good thing that happens in my life. So you've been given the privilege, I have been given the privilege of this kind of awareness. So it behooves us to take that awareness and to use that awareness every day of our lives to produce good in our own lives for the good of ourselves and the good of all else besides. Now let me tell you, none of us are here except for one thing and one thing alone, and that is to be in sacred service to the truth of our essential selves, to the truth of our being. As Shakespeare says, to thine own self be true, and then it follows, as the day, the night, you cannot be false to any man. And so all we have to do is take care of our stinking thinking, take care of our lack and limited thinking, our lacking and limited thinking, and the rest follows. Every good thing is added on to us. And as the scriptures again say, seek you first the kingdom and all its righteousness, and everything else will be added on to you. Well, the kingdom is consciousness. Seek first the kingdom of consciousness. Divine consciousness, your essential essence in consciousness, your pure consciousness. Enter into that and all things else are added onto you. It's as simple and it is as challenging as that. Beware of what you're thinking. Beware of what you're feeling. And if it's not to your good, change it, and change it instantly. You can do it. And because you can do it, that's why we're here in this room today. There's something in us that knows that we can measure up, that we can be like those saplings, and we needn't be worried about any storms that beset us, because we know that within the sap of us there's something greater than all of the storms combined, and that cannot be overcome. That goodness in us, that power in us, that essence in us, our essential self can never be overcome, not even by our sad, sorry selves. We can do everything we can to try and destroy ourselves, but it can't happen. It's inevitable that you and I will wake up one day and become conscious of the truth of our being and realize I'm not the idea I thought I was. I'm not the person I thought I was. And if that's good for me, it's good for everybody else too, whom I know. And then our restless yearnings will cease and all of our sorrows will depart when that day dawns, because that's the way life is. That's the teaching, and every mystic that has crossed our path, every realized being that has come our way and is still and is with us in this day will say the same thing. Will say the same thing. It is done unto you as you believe. It is done unto you as you decide it is. It is done unto you as you allow it to be. So this week, you and I, our homework, so to speak, is to monitor our thoughts, be with our thoughts, pay attention to our thoughts, and then erase and replace as the need arises. And notice I've said erase and replace as the need arises, because there is a need to erase and replace. I don't care who you are sitting in this room, all of us have work still to do, or we wouldn't be wearing bodies. So, pay attention, and erase and replace what needs to be erased and replaced within our minds, within our emotions, and then life will unfold beautifully. Now, as I say, set yourself up for success. Tell yourself you're going to do it for an hour to begin with. See how you get on. You might manage 5 minutes. But when you wake up to the fact that, oh my gosh, I've been thinking this dreadful thought for the last whatever, just change. Go into change mode and erase and replace. That's all we do. And it's tedious in the beginning, but it pays dividends if we persist. Bit by bit, drop by drop, step by step. And there it is for you and for me, and that's what Spirit has in store for us today, this week, and I'm knowing that everybody is going to have their best week yet. Do you agree? Yes. So it is.
We invite you to experience Dr. Moira in person on Sundays. Our services are at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., and childcare is available. Please join us. If you enjoy these messages and would like to make a donation to our center, please visit our website at redondocsl.org. Thank you for your support of this ministry.